and we've been talking quite a bit about this with Luke and others, is that opportunity for folks to get into that. You don't see starter homes the way you used to, right? I had a starter home. It was just over 1,000 square feet, it was unfortunate because that starter home in San Diego cost over $500,000 at the time, and it was ridiculous to think about. And I was clever enough to buy it, during one of the worst economic periods, and increases, and lost my shorts on that. But the good news is we have an opportunity to kind of hit that reset button here, and we still have, one of the things that was listed earlier is that housing or that land stock, the decisions we make today on that last 15% or so of raw land, that's going to define our future moving forward. So if we mess that up now, we've messed it up for a generation. So if we don't really start contemplating what that looks like now and giving folks the opportunity to start their lives here at that age, or continue their lives here if they choose to, we're missing a huge opportunity
right now. And I don't anticipate that housing prices will tank again. I'm sure they'll go down, but I don't expect them. I don't think we'll ever see $300,000 or $250,000 for a median household price again. So we have to think about, how are we going to provide if we want those populations and we want to care for seniors? And I just don't want to warehouse seniors. I want seniors to have activities and opportunities, and really they should have a chance that where they live shouldn't be a burden to them, so that they can get out and do other things, really. So their living facilities should facilitate having a better lifestyle, out with the public. So we're going to have to change our thinking if we want younger people here, which is good for the school districts, because right now enrollment's declining because we aren't getting any young families. High school enrollment is going up, and middle school to some degree, but elementary school is not. If we want to attract younger and care for our seniors, we're going to have to talk about higher density housing, where and it's going to be nice condos and nice family apartments with spaces for kids to play and play areas. And I think the mindset of the young people today is, I don't know that a lot of them want houses with big yards like we did. My son spent way enough time on riding lawnmower in his youth to probably never want to mow grass again. So I think they have a different idea of, it's more of an urban setting. So then I look to what we're going to do with Uptown Temecula. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to attract, that age group. And because it'll be a walking district, maybe it's something that can serve seniors. So obviously the thing that we want to preserve today is, the small town feel. And we do that because of the demographic of the population. So housing we've got to pay attention to housing. And we've got to provide for the demographic that we want to stay here and we want to care for, our younger families and seniors. So it's going to require more higher density housing, or at least closer. They'll live in closer quarters. Okay. Go ahead, Zach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I feel like, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but if you don't say public safety and small town feel, somehow you don't want those things. And I don't want that to be misconstrued.
Yeah, sure.
But what does that mean, right? What does small town feel mean? I grew up in a legitimate small town of less than 5,000 people.
Me too.
And I can tell you, our city has a quote unquote better small town feel than that town ever had, right?
Really?
So it's really thinking about what does that look like, and it's different for everyone. I'm struggling with some of this data that stops at 2018, 2019. We're in 2021 now, and again, I mentioned it earlier, COVID has drastically shifted a lot of the things that are happening in our community. So I don't know that we have a legitimate, clear picture of sort of migration habits and things like that. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that 20 to 29-year-olds aren't coming back, right? And you brought it up, they can't afford to live here. The economy doesn't offer them, the local economy doesn't offer them what they need for their needs. So we need to really think about that and what does that mean, and having a segment of our population leave, it really weakens our community as a whole. I know the more successful neighborhoods are neighborhoods where young and old grow up together and they interact together. And if I have an older couple living next to me, I know my home is probably safer for it because they're home a lot and they're at their window and they're making sure everything's okay on the street, right? And when they need help, I'm there to help them.
Of course.
So those are things we really need to think about of what does that look like going forward.
That's how babysitters are born.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, that's important to sort of understand the whys, right? Like our family, we'll be sending off our daughter to college, and if she were here, she would tell you there's no way she's coming back. You know, that should be an alarm for us, right? That should be an alarm. I want my children to come back after school because the education opportunities here locally aren't as diverse as they need to be. We have a great thing going in our community. I want to make sure that everyone is able to come back. Some of those things are just out of our control. The economy is out of our control. If you look at the 2010, we were in the midst of a recession at that time, and the housing data in here is completely different now, 10 years later. So just being mindful of that. I do think when we look at housing stock, we need to really think about micro apartments, micro for sale units to really provide a space for everyone that wants to live here, that can live here, because things are changing. My son now, our youngest son, enjoys mowing for like twice now. I don't think it's going to go much beyond that. So again, things are changing, right? So when I look at those questions, I certainly want us to preserve and strengthen what we have, and what that means to our entire community is different. But it's collectively where we stand, right? And we all don't have to agree on everything, but the idea that we collectively stand on these principles that are outlined in the 2010 plan are really that foundation for us. Future trends, I think we really need to be mindful of the environment. I think climate change, whether you think it's man-made or not, however you define that, our climate is changing. I've never experienced the amount of humidity in Temecula that we've experienced in the last several years. Those weather patterns are changing. So what does that mean for us with our facilities and even transportation, emergency planning? Transportation is a huge one. We talk a lot about traffic. No one likes traffic. It's just like a reality. No one enjoys sitting in traffic. But how we mitigate that, we really need to rethink that. Adding capacity isn't always going to solve, and quite honestly doesn't ever genuinely solve transportation traffic. So we need to really think about that. We can move to an all-electric future, but people are still driving to Old Town in electric vehicles and still struggling to find parking. So we really need to look at what does it mean to have mobility? What does it mean to get around our city? And again, that's active transportation. That's investing in public transportation. I think for me, staffing at the city level is important when we talk about those things, talking about having someone dedicated to active transportation, to public transportation, to really work within the community to provide those things. Again, sort of going back to the environment and what does that mean for our future. That's, I think, about where I'm at right now. So.
We're talking like it's very, things are dire. And in some situations, when we talk about the demographic shift, that is a concern. But I will interject this, that the school district has more than 200 teachers who have come back, who have graduated from TVUSD and have come back to work here. So I think that's great. If we could achieve that same result with other aspects of the community, it'd be great. But the school district's doing really well. Go ahead, Stu.
All right, well, just keeping the small town feel rolling. You know what? My kids, I have 3 adult kids. They all moved out of Temecula from about age 19 till about 25, 26. Yeah. And that was when they got married, started having kids. Yeah. And guess where they wanted to move to? Temecula. Yep. So, I think it's the get out of Mayberry mentality. They're in this environment. We're in the Temecula bubble, and they just feel like they want to experience something different, and that's why they flight out. But once they start having kids and they experience where they flew to, they want to fly back.
So much better.
So I'm not concerned about that demographics moving out. What I'm more concerned about is that senior demographic that's moving out, because especially with the economic value of their homes today, they're cashing out, and a lot of them are just leaving because there is no senior communities to move to in Temecula. You know, there's several in Marietta. You know, you got the Hot Springs, you've got the one off of Cal Oaks. I can't think of the name of it now. But anyways, you've got several communities up in Marietta, and I've had several of my customers, actually, that's where they're moving, up there. You know, we have maybe one or two that I would consider independent living, you know. The one off of Heritage Park, that's another one I talk to a lot of people. And because it's, you own your place, you live there, you're independent. And that's something that I think we kind of missed on that demographic, is there really isn't a whole lot of senior communities, and the value of their property right now is so strong that I think if we did this survey again, we'd see that number shifted a lot. And so, yeah, so as far as future trends, I think we got to look at crime. I think we got to look at especially property crime, because I've been a victim 3 times in the last 4 months. And so, and I'm not, we catch them, but it's a catch and release program at the prison system. So it's like we've got to think outside the box. What can we as the city leaders, what can we do to somehow raise that electric fence around the Temecula bubble? What do we need to do to make it undesirable for criminals to use us as their victims? So I think that's going to be a major thing we're going to have to consider in the next 20 years. And so, and I think that, to me, going forward, we really need to focus on what can we do as a city to increase that level of protection. Because I don't the state is dropping the ball. Oh. This is not Riverside Sheriff. This is not any kind of a departmental anything. It's the laws that are on the books protect the criminals. Yep. And makes us the victims in perpetuity. So we have to do something as a city to correct that. You know, whatever we can do legally, however we can raise that, I don't know. But that's something we really need to focus on in the next 20 years.
Mr. City Manager, how many senior living facilities do we have? Because I know we had some in the pipeline, so.
Yeah, there are what we'll call age-restricted housing in the city limits. I don't know off the top of my head if, Luke, you know how.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but there's Highgate, there's the vineyards over by Chaparral. There's a new facility that was just built just behind kind of Home Depot on the south side of town. Of course, the Generations Project, which is a huge development, is approved.
Somers Bend has some age-restricted housing.
Somers Bend has some age-restricted housing.
On the northeast side.
Yeah, there's upwards of 2,000 units of senior housing that's available within the city right now.
So it's coming, but looking at the numbers and the trends that we're looking at, you know, we're gonna, I mean, it's direly needed. So, does that make you feel better, Stu? Because I lost track of how many. We had so many in the pipeline, I didn't know.
Well, it seems like all the ones that we have in the pipeline or has been built recently are more of apartment-style assisted living facilities. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about freestanding, I live in my house, you live in your house, and that kind of community. That's what we don't see here. Where, like I said, you know, like the Hot Springs, that's a perfect example of a very large, well-managed, laid out senior community that is, in my opinion, I'd live there. You know, I mean, it's beautiful. Every time I go visit someone there, it's like, dang, this is nice up here.
You can't get in.
No, so, you know, and that's the kind of thing. I mean, Heritage Park is the closest thing to that.
Yeah.
You know, in Temecula, and that's the thing that I'm, you know, I don't plan to live in one for a long time, but anyways, that's and what we've got going. Yes, I mean that is senior living, but it's more of an assisted living / 1 foot.
Really what you're talking about is housing that's affordable for seniors, right? Yeah. Right? Yeah, and the same thing would hold true for the younger population too. Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't really want to beat this down into a dead horse or beat a dead horse or anything, but the idea that, you know, aging in place, I think, is the most important thing. We can talk about aging in place and what that means. That means your existing home, whether you bought it, 30 years ago or not, is a place that you can live and you can, again, age in place. It's important, and wraparound services from healthcare to transportation, all those things matter on choices and when people decide to whether or not to age in place or not. And I do think age-restricted housing has its place. But I think when you talk about the health of a community, it's genuinely in that you have a broad mix of people living on the same street, that's where you get that small town feel, because you all know each other and you're helping each other and you're working towards a common goal. So, again, aging in place is an important component of seniors and their life, their older years in our community.
Thank you for being sensitive about saying
Did you
old
know-
age.
I'm very thoughtful of that.
So, I mean, what we're getting from all of this is that we need to have a variety of housing types, in various locations, and obviously, and some people want to stay in, I want to stay in my house forever. Some people don't want to, so, and I think, we've made a good point that we just need to be cognizant of the diversity of housing that we're going to need.
Yeah, and there's quite a few themes that we're hearing here, so thank you for the input here.